Tonight, the Trump administration is working on Plan B after the Supreme Court struck down Plan A and ruled that his sweeping emergency tariffs are illegal and not an emergency. The rare and stinging loss for the president at the high court is a major victory, actually, for my next source. He argued this very case against the president's tariffs in front of these justices and won. Neil Katyal is the plaintiff's lead attorney, the former acting solicitor general, and who has argued more than 50 cases before the Supreme Court. Neil, I think a big question people have is, where does this one rank for you?
Well, I don't think, Caitlin, first of all, thank you for having me on. I don't think this is about me or my victory. I think it's a victory for the Constitution, for our founders' vision of what America is, which is to recognize that sometimes our leaders are going to be overly ambitious, overly aggressive, and the system they designed creates the opportunities for self-correction. And it takes guts. And here we had guts, not by me, but by a group of small businesses that stood up and said, hey, this isn't what America's about. And so they did what a lot of our nation's biggest companies were afraid to do, which is take the president on these sweeping, unprecedented tariffs, and they won. And they won not just in some, partisan decision or something like that by a bunch of Democrats.
So here's the scoop. The Trump administration is scrambling to come up with a Plan B now that the Supreme Court has shut down Plan A, declaring those hefty emergency tariffs illegal and not an actual emergency. That's got to sting for the president. It's a pretty rare loss at the high court, but it's a big win for my next guest. He took on this very case against those tariffs and came out on top. Neil Katyal, who served as the acting solicitor general and has argued over 50 cases before the Supreme Court, was the lead attorney for the plaintiffs on this one. When he joined the conversation, he made it clear that this victory isn't just about him. He emphasized that it stands for the Constitution and the vision our founders had for America, where sometimes leaders can get a bit too ambitious. He pointed out that the system they created allows for a bit of self-correction, which takes real courage. In this case, it was a group of small businesses that had the guts to stand up against the president's unprecedented tariffs, and they ultimately won. Not just in a partisan way, but in a truly constitutional sense. Meanwhile, it seems things are getting a bit messy in Trump's inner circle, and the mainstream media seems keen to keep it under wraps, but there are definitely cracks showing. I'm talking about this Natalie Harp situation. Now, who is Natalie Harp? Well, most folks might not know, but she's considered one of the influential figures in the Trump White House. Recently, rumors started swirling, fueled by some late-night visits and letters, and Trump's camp is in full-on denial, trying to brush it all off. To make things even spicier, a photo popped up in January 2026, and suddenly, it's all anyone can talk about. Books are being released, the Secret Service is on alert, and Melania is reportedly finding Harp in unexpected places. Trump is busy on Truth Social calling everything phony junk, and his team is labeling the rumors as baseless. But let's be real, when so many people are talking, and there's a chorus of similar stories, it's hard not to wonder what's really happening behind closed doors. Before diving into everything, let me just say that headlines nowadays can be pretty tricky to trust. That's why we set up Pump Politics, to bring you the real stories with actual context and no corporate spin. If you're looking to stay ahead of the news, why not join our free newsletter? We send the latest updates right to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to sign up. And if you're interested in supporting what we do, come join our community that genuinely cares about the truth. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. The Supreme Court made a significant ruling today. It was a clear win for the rule of law, even with 2 of Trump's 3 appointees siding against him. This decision really shows where things stand. As for small businesses waiting on this decision, their reactions have been a mix of gratitude and feeling vindicated. It's no easy feat for them. They usually don't have a ton of money laying around. The pressure on their families is real, but they stepped up and made a meaningful impact. For me, it felt like a once-in-a-lifetime privilege to be there before the Supreme Court, arguing from a place rooted in our constitutional history, drawing from what Alexander Hamilton and James Madison envisioned for our country. Speaking of powerful figures, let's talk about Natalie Harp. She's Trump's executive assistant at 33 years old and has been with him since 2022. When I say she's influential, I mean she controls all the information flowing in and out of the Oval Office. She manages communications and has direct access to everything. Senators are saying that if you want something done, you need to talk to her. It's wild to think that as a senator needing something from Trump, you're not going to call him directly or even email the chief of staff. You're calling Natalie Harp. She decides what messages get through and what requests are worth Trump's attention each day. She's essentially filtering what the president sees and hears constantly. The situation isn't just some assistant level stuff, it's real power and influence over the whole administration. When you're in a position like that, you can really make or break careers by choosing which information gets to the president. Now, here's where it gets interesting. There are books by major authors that raise concerns from the Secret Service, love letters that talk about someone being all that matters, and even tales of someone delivering documents to Trump late at night at Mar-a-Lago. And Trump's reaction, he claims she just loves her president. That's the explanation. I'm not suggesting anything inappropriate is happening, but let's be honest, the White House response is pretty weak. With so many sources ringing alarm bells about this, and Trump's team insisting, nothing to see here, it's only natural for people to start filling in the blanks. Human nature really leans into that. When people sense evasion, their minds go to the worst-case scenario, and that's exactly what's unfolding. Timing couldn't be worse for Trump right now. He's facing some tough challenges. A war in Iran, a 36% approval rating, 9 American service members lost, a majority of Americans opposing military strikes, over 650 lawsuits looming, and his administration has just shut down the Department of Homeland Security. So, yeah, this distraction is the last thing he needs, but it's happening anyway. The tabloids are in a frenzy, books are unleashing explosive allegations, and the public is left scratching their heads, wondering why Trump won't just tackle this issue head on. I get it. Everything seems like a scandal in the Trump era, but this feels different, mainly because it's being fueled by credible sources, including established authors and accounts from the Secret Service. Even senators are bringing it up. Meanwhile, Trump's team is kind of shrugging it off with, "Trust us, it's fake," which isn't really an explanation at all. It comes off as denial, and we all know that when you start stonewalling, people tend to assume the worst. And let's not forget, the Democrats are circling the wagons and media outlets are diving into this story. So here's the deal. Trump's team isn't offering any solid explanation amidst all the buzz surrounding the best-selling books and the numerous claims about him. Just a lot of denial and dismissive comments that feel pretty flimsy. With his approval ratings already in freefall, it's almost like they're tossing gasoline onto an already raging fire. Meanwhile, Democrats have a golden opportunity here. They're armed with video footage, testimonials from the Secret Service, details about late-night visits, and even love letters, plus Melania's expressed worries. What does Trump do? He brushes it all off as fake, leaving a giant opening for the Democrats to shape the narrative however they want. They can tell people what this all means, and that's incredibly powerful, especially now with the midterms approaching. This is happening at a time when the fallout from the Iran war is really dragging down Trump's support, and his approval is hitting record lows. With folks already second-guessing his judgment and leadership, adding this personal turmoil to the mix creates a bigger problem. It's not just about policy anymore. It's also about character and stability in the Trump White House. Now, this situation isn't just typical office gossip. It's linked to everything unfolding right now. There's the backlash against the Iran war, the ongoing legal troubles, and a significant decrease in Trump's credibility. Democrats are capitalizing on this, pointing out that we can't trust the administration when you see what's happening behind the scenes. Whether or not there's concrete proof, the damage is already established, and that's key for the upcoming midterms and everything else on the horizon. The thing is, these scandals aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a broader picture. With the Iran war being unpopular, Trump's approval sitting at 36%, and over 650 lawsuits hanging over him, plus issues with the Department of Homeland Security being shut down, stacking on this latest drama gets people thinking harder. They start to question more intensely what else could be happening. So, let's take a moment to talk about Natalie Harp and why she's such a big deal in Trump's world, even if most people have never even heard her name. She's been with Trump since 2022 and has really become essential to his inner circle. I mean, she's the one who runs his meetings, manages his schedule, and filters his calls. Essentially, she's the barrier between Trump and everyone else. That's quite a bit of power for someone who's relatively unknown to the general public. Now, when senators like Barrasso and Graham say that if you need to get to Trump, Harp is the one to talk to, you quickly realize just how pivotal she is. She's the gatekeeper, deciding the flow of information that reaches the president. Just think about that for a second. She's helping shape his daily perspective and decisions. That's some serious influence, and I can only imagine the pressure she feels. But then, things take a rather peculiar turn. A book recently came out that paints a rather troubling picture of her role. We're talking about tales of love letters and late-night visits to Trump's private quarters, making the Secret Service quite concerned because they've flagged what they call an obsessive fixation. There are even accounts of Melania discovering HAARP in compromising situations at Mar-a-Lago late at night while she's delivering documents. And these aren't just any writers spinning wild stories. These are established journalists with solid reputations and sources within the administration. They're all picking up on similar patterns of behavior that have raised eyebrows with law enforcement. This relationship dynamic is alarming enough for the Secret Service to take notice. It's definitely not something you can just brush aside. Now, Trump's response to all this, he simply said, "She loves her president." But really, that explanation doesn't quite tackle the serious allegations being raised. The whole situation just seems to spiral further out of control, honestly. Instead of directly addressing the late-night visits, the letters, or the concerns raised by the Secret Service, the response just glosses over everything. Instead, it throws in a compliment about HAARP, which only raises eyebrows. If there's really nothing unusual going on, it makes you wonder why there isn't a straightforward answer, or at least some clarification, about what's actually happening behind closed doors. When accusations come up, especially involving a young woman having unprecedented access to the president and the mysterious late-night meetings, along with those letters and Secret Service worries, one would think a clear explanation would be the best course of action. But that's not what we're seeing. Instead, the administration is dismissing the rumors as baseless, which doesn't really cut it. Just saying baseless doesn't tackle any of the real concerns. It feels more like stonewalling, hoping the public will just lose interest and move on to something else. But here's the catch. This isn't just going to drift away. The story has too much momentum, too many reliable sources backing it, and too much consistency for people to just forget about. What many might not realize is that this is all happening against a backdrop of Trump's already shaky credibility. His approval ratings are low, sitting at 36%, and public sentiment around the Iran war is equally grim, with 59% of Americans opposing it. With 9 U.S. service members having lost their lives and the midterms approaching quickly, Democrats are poised to pounce on any opportunity, and this situation is basically handing them the perfect ammo. Trump's lackluster response just seems to accept that gift without any fight. Regardless of whether the allegations hold any truth, the way it looks is just terrible. It's not a good scene with all these serious implications floating around, and the more Trump tries to dodge the issues, the more attention they garner. So, it's been quite a whirlwind lately with everything happening around Trump. There's this new story, and people are really buzzing about it. You've got media outlets diving into this, poring over reports, and even books are hitting the bestseller list covering all the juicy details. Of course, the tabloids can't get enough of that photo from January 8th, and it's like they've got a feeding frenzy on their hands. Trump's usual playbook seems to be in full swing with his response, posting some typical stuff on True Social, which is just classic Trump. He tends to attack the source of the information, dismiss the claims, and then just try to move on. But honestly, this time might be different. There's just so much being said by so many people that it's hard to brush it all aside. The consistency of the accounts and the number of independent confirmations makes it tougher for him to just wave it off. Here's where it gets even more interesting. This drama unfolds while Trump is also grappling with the Epstein situation. Over 1,000 unverified tips are floating in, connecting him to Epstein, and legal issues are popping up all over the place. The chaos at DHS isn't helping either, with the organization's shutdown adding to the overall feeling of disorder. So when this new story drops, it really raises eyebrows. People start to wonder what other secrets might be lurking behind the scenes. What's Trump really keeping under wraps? It's a tough time for him, with his administration already under a lot of pressure. The war in Iran is not a hit with the public, the legal troubles he faces are a genuine mess, and that DHS shutdown is causing real concern about security. Then you toss this new narrative into the mix, and suddenly, he doesn't just look chaotic, he looks like he's losing control. There's a sense that the people around him might not be the most trustworthy either, and that perception is really sticking around. It's becoming part of the overall story about his administration. Now, the Democrats seem ready to seize on this for their midterm strategy, and honestly, they likely have a strong shot at it. Even if no concrete proof of any wrongdoing pops up, the optics are undeniable. The weak and unconvincing nature of Trump's response feeds right into the narrative. It's a story that will definitely find its way into campaign ads and debates, painting a picture that is not favorable for him. It's quite something to see Trump painting himself as chaotic and untrustworthy, especially with his approval rating sitting low at 36%. This messaging is going to hit hard, and it's clear that Democrats grasp something Trump seems to miss. The truthfulness of the allegations doesn't really matter. What counts is whether people believe them. When he brushes things off as phony junk, it doesn't take long for folks to think there might be something real behind those smokescreens. His strategy of avoiding the conversation is only making people more suspicious, allowing the narrative to thrive without his input. And let's not forget, more books about Trump are on the way, with authors working around the clock to dig up juicy details. Each new release could add to the ongoing story and arm Democrats with even more reasons to critique him. In an election year, that's a risky spot to find yourself in. Now, diving deeper into what's actually happening, there's a lot to unpack. First off, Natalie Harp holds way more clout than many give her credit for. She's not just some assistant, she's the gatekeeper for Trump, controlling the flow of information and deciding who gets a seat at the table. She's involved in every major decision coming out of the White House because nothing reaches Trump without her stamp of approval. Senators are actually asking for her specifically when they need something handled. That's not typical assistant power, that's West Wing level authority. That brings us to the next point. The consistency of the allegations coming from different sources is hard to overlook. There are Secret Service accounts flagging her behavior as a security risk. Established authors are documenting precise incidents, including descriptions of letters and late-night visits. Melania seems to validate at least some of the concerns, too, and that all adds weight to the situation. It's pretty clear that when someone wields that kind of power, any question or doubt surrounding their judgment or relationships can have wide-reaching effects on policy and who gets heard. So, let's talk about this situation that's unfolding. Trump's team is trying to label everything as fake, but it's quite interesting when you see that multiple independent sources, including law enforcement and major journalists, are all saying similar things. That gives you a sense that there's something more than just rumors swirling around. There's definitely smoke, and where there's smoke, there's likely a fire somewhere. Now, Trump's reaction to the whole thing isn't doing him any favors. If he really wanted to put this story to rest, he'd directly address it. He could explain the relationship in a straightforward way and clarify why Harp needs late-night access, if that's even true. Instead, he's brushing everything off as phony junk, which isn't convincing anyone who's really paying attention. In fact, it's making people even more suspicious, leading them to wonder what he's trying to hide. That's pretty much the opposite of what he should be doing. The political fallout from this is significant too. This administration is already grappling with a credibility crisis, and that's not pretty. With Trump's approval rating sinking to 36%, ongoing lawsuits piling up, and chaos from a Department of Homeland Security shutdown, this new distraction is just adding fuel to the fire. Democrats are absolutely loving this because it feeds their narrative that Trump is chaotic and untrustworthy. Whether the allegations are true or not, the visuals and the impressions are what really matter, and let's be honest, right now the optics are terrible. What's even more intriguing is the timing of everything. The books coming out and those photos appearing right when Trump is already in a tough spot. He's facing backlash over the war, his popularity is dropping, and now his closest advisors are stuck answering questions about his personal life. That kind of timing doesn't just happen by accident. This is the sort of story that gets attention when an administration is already struggling. If Trump had strong approval ratings and everything was smooth sailing, this might not even register on the radar. But in this current climate, it's a serious weapon for Democrats, and you can bet they're going to use it to their advantage. It's hard to ignore the seriousness of what's happening, especially when it's law enforcement professionals who are bringing these concerns to light. These aren't just random tabloid reporters, they are trained observers with security clearances, which means they have a solid understanding of what constitutes a real threat. If they're flagging something as a security issue, you can bet they're seeing something serious that could impact Trump's security or the integrity of the White House. It's not just gossip, it's a legitimate concern. Then you have Melania's involvement. If the reports hold up, it looks like she's noticing things that are concerning enough to keep her awake at night, looking for Harp in places she shouldn't be. That's definitely a red flag, considering Melania isn't the type to make a fuss over trivial matters. Her concern hints at actual tension in their relationship, suggesting that there are behaviors causing issues. Sure, some of this could be exaggerated or even a little distorted by the time it hits the media, and those details might not be 100% accurate, but the fact that we have consistent accounts coming from multiple independent sources, including reports from the Secret Service and close associates of Trump, points to a grain of truth. That truth is damaging enough because the narrative is already shaping up, and a denial won't erase the impact. The letters are particularly revealing, with descriptions that sound so personal. Phrases like, "You are all that matters to me, my guardian and protector," don't come from a professional relationship. Those words belong in a love letter. If Harp really sent something like that to Trump, it raises serious questions about judgment and appropriateness. You can't just shake that off with a "she loves her president" comment. It's an issue that needs to be addressed and explained. It's clear Trump isn't willing to give any explanation, and that really says something. This whole situation is going to stick with him as we head into the midterms. Democrats are already jumping on it, pointing out the chaos within his administration and raising eyebrows about those questionable relationships. Even if these allegations don't end up being fully proven, the damage is already done. The narrative is in place. Trump's feeble response isn't helping his case. If anything, it only fuels more suspicion, making it seem like there's something to hide. Just picture how this all resonates with suburban and women voters, especially those who are already unsure about Trump. You've got a young assistant with direct access to the president, love letters surfacing, the First Lady reportedly worried, and the Secret Service even raising alarms. That's not a narrative that's going to win over independent voters. It seriously undercuts Trump's credibility with the moderates. And no doubt Democrats are going to make the most of every detail from this. It'll show up in ads, be a hot topic during debates, and pop up each time Trump tries to discuss policy. He's without a solid answer since all he has done is deny everything so far, and people aren't likely to buy that given the weight of the evidence and the number of sources involved. To make things worse, we've got the Department of Homeland Security shutdown happening right alongside the revelations about security concerns with the president's assistant. Talk about terrible optics. It's a perfect storm that feeds into the narrative of Trump's administration being chaotic and untrustworthy when it comes to sensitive roles and relationships. Honestly, it's almost like the universe is conspiring against him. The timing couldn't be worse. So, what's next? Well, those books will keep flying off the shelves, tabloids will keep the buzz alive, and Democrats will press this narrative relentlessly. Meanwhile, Trump will continue to brush it all aside unless something significant changes. This cycle is going to keep spinning through the midterms. Either he needs to come forward with a detailed response that tackles the specific allegations head-on, or this story will remain wide open. Right now, things are definitely not looking good. The main issue isn't so much about anything inappropriate happening, but more about how poorly the White House is responding. They're being so vague and unconvincing that it leaves a lot of room for people to speculate, and honestly, when they do that, they usually jump to the worst conclusions. That's just how people are. The longer this drags on without a solid explanation, the worse it gets. The damage keeps piling up, and all of this feeds into the bigger picture of Trump's administration appearing chaotic and untrustworthy. This story is going to be a key player in campaign ads and political discussions, especially with the upcoming 2026 elections on the horizon. It's some powerful ammunition, especially when you consider all the other crises like the backlash from the Iran war, legal troubles, and the ongoing chaos with everything else swirling around. The Harp situation is really just adding fuel to the fire, reinforcing the idea that the administration is out of control. It's clear that this is significant. The fact that Trump isn't addressing it seriously or directly and merely brushing it off as nonsense only makes it even more important because avoiding the issue isn't a strategy. Denying it isn't going to help either. Right now, it feels like Trump is just wishing this will disappear on its own, but that's not happening. It's only getting worse. Each day that passes without a real response makes the story grow, and more people start to think there's something he's trying to hide, which is how elections are lost and credibility starts to crumble. The Harp situation has become kind of a symbol for all the chaos surrounding Trump's administration. It reflects the personal chaos that echoes the policy mess. The lack of transparency is just eroding trust. And with weak responses, people naturally become suspicious. Unless Trump shifts his approach and tackles this head-on with honesty, this story is going to follow him right through the midterms and beyond.